Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons and Dragons: Honor Among Thieves weekend box office totals for weekend 9. All right, weekend box office totals for weekend 9. All right, so this is the 9th week, 2 months and 1 week after Dungeons and Dragons: Honor Among Thieves came onto the screen, and let's talk about its total. I don't know what its totals were. They were maybe 100, 200,000. It did nothing this week, and the reason why is it did so poorly this week that it finally dropped off the top 10. So, that's a wrap, okay? We know what Dungeons and Dragons box office total is now, right? Because the actual it was 207 million last week, and it's 207 million this week, right? Like, so the totals for the box office totals for Dungeons and Dragons are 207 million domestic. 207 million global, 93 million domestic. All right, those are absolutely abominably horrible numbers. This was a commercial failure. Okay, this movie absolutely was no two ways about it, and I've heard some horrible revisionism on this, but no two ways about it, was an attempt for a trilogy. Okay, and there's been some, like, people are like, oh, they said like weeks after the movie came out and it was clear it didn't make $1 billion that it was only intended to do one movie. No, you didn't hire Michelle Rodriguez, who's making Fast and Furious 10, to make a standalone movie that had a budget of $150 million. It frustrates me how outrageously irresponsible media outlets are. They just spout utter nonsense. It's extremely frustrating. It's extremely frustrating. This was meant to be a trilogy. This was meant to be the start of the Dungeons and Dragons cinematic universe. And we know that Hasbro failed, right? They were not able to do it, right? Now, I'm not saying that because I'm trying to be mean to Hasbro or to be mean to D&D. You know me. I'm an ally to Dungeons & Dragons. I'm an ally to Hasbro. I'm saying it because it's true, right? And I cannot believe how much just flat-out lying is out there, right? Like, these numbers are abominably bad. This was a blockbuster attempt that failed, okay? So what were the failures, right? This movie, first of all, the goal of this film, without exception, was billions. 1 billion, 2 billion, or 3 billion. That was the goal, right? And if you don't understand that, you just don't understand math, and you don't understand movies, and you don't understand numbers, and you don't really understand anything. And if you believe for 1 second that this was a standalone and that this wasn't intended to make $1 billion, you're just not paying attention. This was intended to be a $1 billion, $2 billion, $3 billion film. This was built as an American blockbuster, and it failed to do that commercially. Okay, all right. Its global box office is a massive failure. It didn't even make $250 million, right? In addition to that, it did not even break 100 million domestic, right? That's very, very bad, right? Now, what does this mean? It means we need a miracle for a sequel. The 9 chances out of 10 right now, there will be no sequel for Dungeons and Dragons: Honor Among Thieves, and we're right back where we were in 2000 with an attempt at a true American blockbuster, a failure at creating an American blockbuster, and this time a failure at creating a real, actual Dungeons and Dragons cinematic universe. That was definitely on the table. That was definitely what this thing was built to do, and it failed to do it. This was a commercial failure. Okay, it was a critical success. It did extremely well on its Rotten Tomatoes, for both critics and movie goers, right? So critics and viewers love this. In fact, everyone who saw this, who was not anti-D&D from the gate, loved this movie. It was a good movie, objectively, non-debatably, right? It was a very, very good movie. It also got a great cinema score. It was a fantastic film. People loved it. And it did every single thing it should have done, right? But it still failed. It was a critical. So we talked about its failures. Didn't make 100 million domestic. Did not make $250 million global, and it should have made at least $1 billion global. Didn't even make $250 million global, and the goal if there was any goal, in my humble opinion, was 1 billion domestic. All right. I'm sorry, 1 billion global. Excuse me. So, but its successes were that it was critically acclaimed, and it was a media darling. Everyone who saw this movie, with 1 out of 100 exceptions, loved this film. It was an extremely well received movie, right? The other thing it did, which was a major success, it had. So, what were its successes? There was one other major thing that it did accomplish that I think was really impressive. And I apologize, I'm drawing a blank right now. So right now, it was a critical success, and that's not nothing. And I think more than anything else, it's a Hamilton moment. I'm not going to throw away my shot. It did what the OSRs and the Indies didn't even have the courage to attempt. It failed, right? It skied the Black Diamond, and it tumbled down the slopes, and its skis went akimbo, and it crashed, right? And everybody who stood up on the mountain watching it laughed, right? The OSRs and the Indies, they all laughed, but the reality is they never tried. They stood on the sidelines, and they laughed while Hasbro tried. And so I am very proud of Dungeons & Dragons for doing the thing, and I'm proud of them for failing. I'm very, very, very proud of them for failing. They did this was a tremendous attempt. I don't think they did anything wrong, and I'm really, really proud of them for everything they did. Every single word of that is my humble opinion. What's important is when I get to hear your humble opinion, when you get in the comments and send your traffic. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.